My fiancé left me at the altar with 150 guests waiting, but when I found out, he ran away with my younger sister that day, and now my family demands I forgive her or be cut off. I made a decision they never saw coming. I'm 26 years old. I work as an administrative assistant at an accounting firm, and there are still days when I wake up and I can't believe all of this actually happened. I mean, I know it happened. I lived every second of that nightmare, but there's something in my brain that still refuses to accept that the people I loved most in the world did what they did to me. I guess I need to tell this story. I don't know, maybe to process it myself or so someone else reads this and doesn't feel so alone if something similar ever happens to them. Because I literally felt like I was the only person in the world whose life had been destroyed in this way. Let's start from the beginning. I met Matthew when I was 15. He was 16. It was in high school, you know, that typical teenage love story that everyone thinks won't last but somehow does. We were those boyfriend and girlfriend that everyone at school knew. The ones who went to every dance together, the ones who sat together at lunch every day. My friends told me I was too young to be so serious with someone, but I was convinced Matthew was the one, and he seemed to think the same about me. We graduated together, went to the same university. Well, he studied engineering and I studied business administration, but on the same campus. And when we turned 22, Matthew proposed to me. It was perfect. Honestly, he did it in the same park where we had our first date. I started crying like crazy and obviously said yes. We decided to wait 2 years to get married because we wanted to finish college and save some money. My family was super excited, especially my mom, who was already planning every detail of the wedding before I even thought about the dress. My sister Stephanie was like 19 at that time. She was in her sophomore year of college, and she seemed genuinely happy for me. We'd always been close. You know, we fought about stupid things like all sisters, but generally we got along well. She was the baby of the family, the spoiled one, and I'd always taken care of her because I was 4 years older. During those 2 years of engagement, everything seemed to be going perfectly. Matthew got a good job after graduating. I also found my position at the accounting firm, and we were saving for the wedding and to eventually buy a house. Stephanie spent a lot of time with us. Like every time we organized something, she was there. At first, it didn't bother me. I mean, she was my sister, and Matthew was always super nice to her. I thought it was sweet that they got along well, you know? It never, not for a second, crossed my mind that there could be anything weird. Matthew told me that Stephanie was like his little sister too, that he liked that we were such a close family. And I completely believed him. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. There were signs, I guess, but when you trust someone completely, you just don't see them. Like that time I showed up at Matthew's place unannounced and Stephanie was there, sitting on his couch watching a movie. They told me she had stopped by to ask for help with a college project, and they stayed watching TV afterward. Or the times I'd see them talking quietly. And when I approached, they'd change the subject. Matthew always had a reasonable explanation for everything, and I was never one of those jealous or controlling people, so I let it go. I thought I was being mature by not making drama over silly things. The wedding day arrived. It was a Saturday in May. The weather was perfect. I'd slept terribly the night before from nerves, but the good kind. You know? That excitement that the next day you're going to marry the love of your life. I got up early, had breakfast with my bridesmaids at the hotel where we were getting ready, and everyone was excited and happy. My mom cried every 5 minutes. My dad was proud. My friends wouldn't stop taking pictures. Stephanie arrived late to the room where we were getting ready. I remember she came in around 11 inches, the morning when she was supposed to be there from 9, and she had a weird look on her face. I asked her if she was okay, and she said yes, that she just hadn't slept well. I didn't give it more thought. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 inches the afternoon. By 2:30, I was ready. With my dress on, I'd spent like $2,000 on that dress. I'd chosen it so carefully. Makeup perfect. Hair incredible. I felt beautiful. It was literally the most important day of my life. At 2:45, the event coordinator told me the guests were all seated, and we'd begin in 15 minutes. At 3, my dad came to get me to walk down the aisle. Everything was ready. Except Matthew. At 3:15, the coordinator told me there was a small delay. Not to worry. At 3:30, I started to really worry. I tried calling Matthew, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I asked my dad to call the best man, Kyle, who's my cousin, and Kyle said Matthew hadn't arrived yet, that he didn't know where he was either. At 3:45, I was starting to panic. At 4, after an hour delay, and with all the guests murmuring and wondering what was happening, Kyle came into the room where I was and told me he needed to talk to me alone. Kyle's face was something I'll never forget. His eyes were red like he'd been crying or was about to, and when he looked at me, I knew that whatever he was about to tell me was going to change my life forever. He said, and I swear I can still hear his exact words in my head. Matthew's not coming. He left. This morning he left his house and didn't come back. And then he added something that literally made me feel like the floor was opening up beneath my feet. Stephanie's not here either. Her car isn't in the parking lot and no one's seen her for hours. I didn't understand immediately. I mean, my brain heard the words but didn't process them. I asked Kyle what he meant by that, and he showed me his phone. Matthew had blocked him. I tried calling Matthew again from my phone and saw he'd blocked me too. Blocked. On our wedding day. I tried calling Stephanie and same thing. Blocked. It was in that moment that everything started to click together in the most horrible way possible. Kyle hugged me as I started to hyperventilate because I literally couldn't breathe. I felt like someone was squeezing my chest with all their strength. I had to go out and tell the 150 guests who'd come to see my wedding that there would be no wedding. My dad did it for me because I couldn't even speak. I remember sitting in that room, still in my wedding dress, looking at the bouquet of flowers I'd chosen months ago, and I just couldn't process what was happening. My mom was hysterical. My dad was furious. My friends didn't know what to say, and I just stayed there, in complete shock. Later that night, already in my apartment, the one I was supposed to leave the next day to move in with Matthew to our new house, Kyle told me he'd talked to some of Matthew's friends. Turns out Matthew and Stephanie had left town that morning, together, in his car. One of Matthew's neighbors had seen them loading suitcases into the car, around 6 inches the morning. 6 in the morning, on my wedding day. Matthew had planned to abandon me at the altar and run away with my younger sister. And the worst part is that Stephanie had also planned it. She knew exactly what they were going to do when she arrived at the room that morning to get ready with me, when she helped me put on my dress, when she told me I looked beautiful. The following days were the worst of my life. I didn't leave my apartment for a full week. Kyle came every day to bring me food because I wasn't eating anything. My friends called me, but I didn't answer. My mom came to see me and just cried and told me she didn't understand how Stephanie could have done this to me. My dad was furious with Matthew, but also confused about Stephanie. We were all in shock. I went through stages. You know, sometimes I was completely numb, not feeling anything. Like, everything was a nightmare I was going to wake up from. Other times I was so angry I wanted to scream and break things, and other times I just cried so much my whole body hurt. The worst part wasn't just Matthew's betrayal. I mean, yes, the man I'd been with for 7 years, the man I was going to marry, had abandoned me at the altar. That was already devastating. But that it was with my sister, that Stephanie had done this to me, that was something my brain simply couldn't process. We grew up together, shared a room for years. I took care of her when she was little, defended her from bullies at school, taught her to drive, was there for her when she had her first breakup. And she repaid me by stealing the man I loved and destroying the most important day of my life. I tried to understand. I really did. I wondered if I'd done something wrong, if there were more obvious signs I should have seen, if somehow I'd caused this. But no matter how much I thought about it, there was no justification. None. Matthew and Stephanie were adults who made the conscious decision to betray me in the cruelest way possible. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was planned. They knew exactly what they were doing. About a month after this happened, I decided I needed professional help because I was sinking. I started going to therapy twice a week. My therapist, Sarah, like 45 years old, super kind, helped me understand that what I was feeling was normal, that I was going through a grieving process. I hadn't just lost my future husband. I'd lost my sister. I'd lost the life I'd planned. I'd lost my trust in people. Sarah told me it was okay to feel everything I was feeling, that there was no right way to process something like this. Little by little, I started rebuilding my life. I went back to work after taking 2 weeks of vacation. My bosses were super understanding, honestly. I blocked Matthew and Stephanie on all social media and asked my friends not to tell me anything about them. I started doing yoga. joined a book club, adopted a cat. I named Oliver. Basically, I did everything you're supposed to do when you're trying to move forward. Some days were better than others. Some days I'd wake up and feel almost normal, and other days I couldn't even get out of bed. And then, like 6 months after the wedding that never was, Matthew called me from an unknown number because I had him blocked. I answered because I thought it might be from work or something important. I heard his voice and my blood literally froze. He said, "Hi, Rachel. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something." I was going to hang up immediately, but something stopped me. I guess curiosity or maybe the need for some kind of closure. Matthew told me he was sorry, that he'd made the worst mistake of his life, that things with Stephanie weren't working out the way he thought they would, that he realized what we had was real, and he'd ruined the best thing that ever happened to him. Basically, he was asking for forgiveness, and although he didn't say it explicitly, I could hear in his voice that he was testing the waters to see if there was any possibility of getting back together. I stayed quiet, listening to him talk for like 5 minutes, and when he finished, I just said, "What you did was unforgivable. I never want to hear your voice again." I hung up and blocked that number too. Can you believe it? 6 months after abandoning me at the altar and running away with my sister, he calls me to tell me he made a mistake, as if that was going to fix anything. As if he could just say, "I'm sorry," and everything would go back to how it was before. That call made me so angry I had to call Kyle to vent. Kyle told me I'd done the right thing, cutting him off immediately. That Matthew didn't deserve another second of my time. And he was right. With my family, things were complicated. My dad didn't want to talk about Stephanie. He basically acted like she no longer existed to him. My mom, on the other hand, was devastated, but was also trying to maintain some kind of relationship with both daughters. She called me often, asked me how I was, but I could feel she was also in contact with Stephanie, and that bothered me. I didn't say anything at first because I understood she was in a difficult position, but it hurt that she seemed to be forgiving Stephanie so easily. About 8 months after the incident, my mom called to tell me she wanted us to have dinner at the family house. She told me it was important, that we needed to talk as a family. I agreed because, I don't know, I guess part of me still wanted to believe my family was going to be on my side, that they were going to understand what had been done to me. I arrived at the house and Stephanie was there. No one had told me she was going to be there. I almost left immediately, but my mom asked me to stay, to please hear what they had to say. We sat at the table, the four of us, and it was the most uncomfortable dinner of my life. Stephanie couldn't even look me in the eye. My mom started by saying that family was the most important thing, that we all make mistakes, that it was time to forgive and move forward. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad was quiet, looking at his plate. I asked my mom if she was serious, if she really expected me to forgive Stephanie after what she did. My mom told me Stephanie was sorry, that she'd been young and confused, that Matthew had manipulated her. I looked at Stephanie and asked her directly if that was true. If Matthew had manipulated her. She didn't say anything for a moment, and then, in a soft voice, said that things had happened and that's it. That she was also suffering because Matthew had left her 2 months ago. And that's when I exploded. I told her I didn't care if Matthew had left her. That didn't change anything about what she'd done to me. I yelled, literally yelled, which I never do, that she had destroyed my life, that she'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, and that there was no excuse, none, that justified what she did. My mom told me to lower my voice, that I was being dramatic. Dramatic. I got up from the table and told my mom that if she thought I was being dramatic for not forgiving the person who ran away with my fiancé on my wedding day, then she clearly didn't understand anything. My dad finally spoke and said that maybe we all needed time, but that eventually the family had to be united. I asked him what that meant exactly, and he told me it meant I had to make an effort to forgive my sister. I left that house and haven't been back since. That was like 4 months ago. My parents called me several times after that dinner, telling me I was being selfish, that Stephanie was my sister and I had to forgive her. They gave me an ultimatum. Either I forgave Stephanie and we went back to being a family, or basically I was out of the family. I told them if that was their decision, then so be it. I wrote a letter. A long letter where I explained everything I felt, why I couldn't forgive Stephanie, and why their pressure for me to do so made me feel even more betrayed. I told them I loved them, but I needed to protect my peace of mind, and if that meant distancing myself from them, then that's what I was going to do. I set clear boundaries. I didn't want to hear about Stephanie. I didn't want them to pressure me to have a relationship with her, and if they couldn't respect that, then we couldn't have a relationship. They didn't respond to the letter. Well, my mom sent me a text saying she was disappointed in me, that she never thought I'd be so resentful. That word, resentful, hurt more than I expected, but it also gave me clarity. I realized my family expected me to swallow my pain and humiliation just to keep the peace, no matter what it cost me. And that wasn't fair. So basically now, I don't talk to my family. Kyle is still my family. He never turned his back on me and was always there for me. My friends have also been incredible. I've been building my own life, on my own terms. I moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood 2 months ago, a place where there are no memories of Matthew or my old life. I got a promotion at work. I started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I'm open to the possibility. Does it still hurt? Of course it does. There are days when I think about everything that happened and feel that stab in my chest. There are days when I see a happy family on the street and wonder what my life would have been like if none of this had happened. But there are also days when I feel good, when I feel strong, when I realize I survived the worst and came out the other side. People ask me if I'll ever forgive Stephanie or Matthew. The truth is, I don't know. Maybe someday, but not because they deserve it, but because I need to let it go completely to move forward. But that day isn't today, and maybe it won't be tomorrow either. And that's okay. I don't have to forgive to heal. I can heal and move forward without giving them that gift. What I do know is that I'm not going to let this define me forever. Yes, something horrible happened to me. Yes, the people I trusted most betrayed me in the cruelest way. But that doesn't mean my life ended there. I'm rebuilding, step by step, day by day. And although there are still difficult days, there are also good days. And those good days are starting to be more frequent than the bad ones. Kyle told me last week he was proud of me, of how I'd handled everything, of how strong I'd been. It made me cry, honestly, but in a good way. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone really saw everything I'd been through and recognized it hadn't been easy. And that was enough, I guess. Knowing that at least one person in my life sees me, understands me, and is there for me without conditions. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't. I know if I'll ever trust someone again, the way I trusted Matthew. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with my family again. But what I do know is that I'm going to be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And that's enough to keep moving forward.